President William Ruto has come out guns blazing, warning those behind violent protests that their attempts to destabilize the country will not succeed. He was speaking yesterday in Kilimani, and we've got a couple of bites, from part of that speech. Let's listen to what the president was saying yesterday, warning those who are seeking to destabilize the government, warning those who are looting and destroying property, and also giving a message to the National Police Service. Take a listen.
Mtu ambaye anachukua moto, anaenda kuchoma biashara ya mtu, anaenda kuchoma mali ya watu wengine. Mtu kama huyo apigwe risasi miguu, aende hospitali, akienda kotini. Yes. Wasimuue, lakini wapige hii miguu ivunjike ndio aende kotini, aende hospitali, akienda kotini. Mimi nimenyamaza, mimi nimewavumilia, lakini mahali imefika. Enough is enough. Those who attack our police, those who attack our security men and women, those who attack our security installations, including police stations, that is a declaration of war. That is terrorism. We are going to deal with you firmly. Na kama wako na mpango, si tukutane 2027? Watengeneze sera yao, tukutane na hawa 2027. Njia ya mkato hapa katikati, hakuna. This country will not be destroyed by a few people who are impatient and who want to have a change of government using unconstitutional means. Wameharibu biashara ya wananchi. Na wao ni viongozi wamechochea hiyo maneno. Wanalipa vijana kwenda choma biashara ya ule. Kwenda choma biashara ya ule. Wale wote ambao wamepatikana watachukuliwa hatua ya sheria na wote watafungwa. Let us not deceive ourselves, and let us not incite the young people of Kenya on matters and employment. It cannot be sorted out in one day. It was never sorted out by the previous administrations. I am working on it now. That is why we have 320,000 young people working in our affordable housing. That is why we have 200,000 young people working in our digital jobs framework. And that is why we have 400,000 young people working outside Kenya today, because for the first time we have a plan.
There is a reason why police have tear gas. There is a reason why water cannons are there. They are supposed to be used to protect the lives and property of other Kenyans when they are in danger. So a person who already has security in his house, guarded by the police, in his car, driven by the police, is telling us the property of other Kenyans is not worth being protected by the police.
Now, I want to reflect on all those things that we've heard from the president and just remind us that this is not the first time that the president is talking. Using the words, enough is enough, is not the first time. Well, if you move away from the presidential debate where he was answering the question of how much is enough, in office as president, it's not the first time that he has said enough is enough. In office as president, this is not the first time that the president is alluding to a plot to remove the government unconstitutionally. And he is not the only one. The deputy president has said it. The cabinet secretary for the interior has said it. Our former cabinet secretary for defense, Aden Duale, has said it. Now, why am I mentioning these four? These four are people who sit in a constitutional institution called the National Security Council. It's chaired by the president. The deputy president sits in it. The cabinet secretary in charge of interior and security sits in it. The attorney general sits there. The cabinet secretary for defense sits there. The chief of defense forces is also a member. The inspector general of police is a member, and the director general of the NIS, plus the cabinet secretary in charge of foreign affairs. When Aden Duale came here a couple of months ago and we asked him, he was talking about the same thing, a plot to destabilize the government. He said, this we know from the National Security Council. When all these conversations are, brought up and you ask, so what information do you have? It's been said that the National Security Council must have discussed it. Why? The National Security Council is a constitutional creation, and it has powers to consume the most raw of intelligence and to make decisions based on that intelligence, on what then happens. And so when you hear people who sit at those high levels, from the president, the deputy president, the cabinet secretary in charge of interior, mentioning coup attempt and an attempt to subvert the constitution, we've said it here before, it's highly, highly concerning. Today, I'd like to address this to the Director of Public Prosecutions, Renson Igonga. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions is established by the Constitution, Article 157, which says that the Director of Public Prosecutions, 157(4), shall have the power to direct the Inspector General of the National Police Service to investigate any information or allegation of criminal conduct, and the Inspector General shall comply with any such direction. I will repeat. The Director of Public Prosecutions shall have the power to direct the Inspector General of the National Police Service to investigate any information or allegation of criminal conduct, and the IG shall comply with any such direction. The words here are direct and shall comply. Renson Igonga and the previous DPPs, we have seen them release a statement saying, we have taken note of a conversation that's happening in the public domain, and we are instructing the Inspector General of Police to conduct an investigation and present a file before us within X number of days. This is a conversation that's not just coming from bar talk. It's a conversation that's coming from the President, the Deputy President, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, who have said that there's a plot to overthrow the Constitution of Kenya. The Constitution of Kenya under Article 1 says all power sits with the people and shall only be exercised in accordance with this Constitution. So if there's any attempt to exercise the power outside of the Constitution, that's an attempt to overthrow the Constitution, and it goes again against Article 3 of the Constitution, which says that everybody has the responsibility and a mandate to protect and observe this Constitution. So I think if we talk about the highest criminality, it's one that seeks to overthrow the Constitution.
100%.
The DPP, if you have not heard it, you may be not living in this country. But the President has said that there's an attempt to overthrow the Constitution. What we expect is that the DPP shall instruct the Inspector General of Police to commence an investigation and to present a file so that the DPP can take those who are seeking to overthrow this Constitution and the government to court. Anything short of that, and what we have just resorted to, is rumor mongers and people who sit at bars and make comments. And that should not happen. If you cannot do it, Renson Igonga, leave office and let somebody else do it.
Didn't even see
Hiyo
that
clip
coming.
vile iko
Yeah.
weka tu,
Hivyo tu.
because it's very comprehensive and sticking to the law, which we assume everybody is, which more and more it's showing that it isn't. I'll attempt to follow Eric Mariam, please, because even you, I know utakuja ukinject vizuri sana.
No.
Very, very, very well. I know we still need to thread on that, but before even reacting to what I think was just very highly inflammatory, like, who does PR for you guys? It's so inflammatory. It's so dismissive of lives lost, property destroyed, and even though it's acknowledging property destroyed, I think it just invalidated everything else that surrounded that. One of the other things that President Ruto mentioned was that he feels like he's been picked on over and above previous administrations. Daniel Arap Moi faced intense resistance. He did during the push for multi-party democracy. This was in the 90s. Protests were frequent, met with detention, torture, and near complete collapse of civic freedoms. Mwai Kibaki saw mass protests after the 2007 election, which spiraled into post-election violence. His government was also criticized for police brutality during demonstrations. Uhuru Kenyatta encountered sustained protest. 2017 election rerun, we remember that. It was marked by police violence and accusations of voter suppression. And by the way, this is not to at least, this is just to give a timeline of how it's not necessarily the first administration that has, faced this attack. However, that administration, there was dialogue used, there was PR tactics to cool tempers, which essentially is possibly more presidential than an outburst. PR tactic to cool tempers, because what we look at leaders, what we look to them for is for that, is to be presidential and to be able to cool tempers, even though you're seething publicly when you come. And I wouldn't even go back to what Eric said. He said it so well. You're also coming out with something comprehensive and not hearsay and not from a place of emotions. Now, what's different now is that President Ruto now operates under the 2010 Constitution. So it enshrines Article 37, the right to peaceful assembly, and demands all security actions respect human rights, Article 238. So unlike Moi or Kibaki, which again, not an excuse, more of an explanation, he came into power in a digital rights-aware age where public scrutiny is immediate and it's unforgiving. Basically, it is what it is. So calling peaceful dissent terrorism and using words like that, you did a really great miss me that, Mariam, when you talked about a coup. Using words like that and then encouraging police to shoot protesters in the leg, it reflects not just authoritarian tendencies, but a direct contradiction of his oath to uphold the Constitution. You talk about this is how the law should be. What we've seen, I believe, over and over again is a complete, just moving further away. And the thing about the Constitution and the law is that it could help root the presidency and the CS and the DIG, everybody could root them in knowing how best to carry out their mandate. But we see them use it less. We've already seen on the second page today of the Daily Nation that the court outlaws police barricades, Nairobi lockdown during demos. Every other day, you'll see an article or a story that speaks to, it is unlawful, it is unconstitutional. How then do you expect it not to backfire? Right? It will, inevitably, because that's why the Constitution was promulgated. It's stubborn. The Constitution is stubborn. That's what it is. Anything that you do against it will cause what we are seeing. So no matter how upset the president feels, no matter how invalidated he feels, if you resort to the Constitution, I highly doubt we'll be needing to see these outbursts. And it was an outburst, and dare I say, a very careless outburst in the face of having somebody like Bridget Ujoki in her home, shot, dead, somebody who was nowhere outside her home. It's a blanket condemnation that is not rooted in fact. It's not rooted in truth. It's not rooted in law. And that's a trend that we're seeing. And as long as that continues, we'll continue to see further descent into even worse things.
100%, Jano.
Yep.
I think you guys have said most of what there is to say. I'll only focus on what wasn't said, because there's as much to take from what wasn't said as there is to take from what was said. One, not a word on the 31 lives that we know of that are confirmed that we lost during Sabasaba Day on Monday. Not a word. Not a apology to the families, not a call for justice, not a call for restraint, nothing. That was not said. Not a word on the trend of seeing policemen and people who are armed and looking like looters and goons move side by side when there are talks of a protest. Not a word, just absolute silence. Not a word on exactly who is this that is attempting unconstitutional means and who can't wait until 2027, and Eric has spoken to that. Not a word. Not a word on the curtailment of the freedom of movement that we saw. Something guaranteed, like you said, in law, in the Constitution. Not a word. Not a word on the many court orders that have been ignored, whether it's on how police officers must conduct themselves, how they must be easily identifiable, how they cannot close off the central business district, how I could go on, the list just piles and piles and piles. But those were not said, right? What was said was shoot them in the legs. What was said was there's people attempting to do this and to do that. What was is I am angry, I am, why me? But again, not a word on all of those things that I've said. I think there's as much to infer from the things unsaid as there is to infer from those that have been said. So I'll just leave it at that. It tells you where the priorities are, for sure. Yeah.
Valid.
You said it very well.
Very, very valid. What was not said.
Because that sends a message to the many who are mourning. We've just talked about Boniface Karaoke, whose requiem mass was held yesterday at the All Saints in Nairobi. And the people who are there who are mourning this young man who was out in the streets trying to earn an honest living. And we have seen on video, he was not armed, he was not even throwing stones at the police, he was not holding fire and taking it to a police station like the president is saying. He was just basically holding his masks. And these police officers come and they rough him up and they shoot him. He's dead. There are very many others. Bridget was in the house and the mother just looks at the daughter who is silent but has blood in her hands and wonders, what's going on? What did you cut yourself? And then the girl suddenly just falls and you realize, bullet. And many others like that. And those deserve justice. And those cannot be dismissed and lumped into the same category as you want to, as arsonists who are raiding a police station for whatever reason, or looters who are raiding a supermarket, like we saw the images, and we're going to be playing some of those traders. County supermarket, for example, in, I think, Keno or Kabati. People just go in and raid the supermarket we saw in Meru, where people go raid and they even light a fire and set the entire building ablaze. Those, you cannot put those ones in the same category as Bridget or Boniface Karaoke. You can't. You can't.
Let's go into a break. When we come back, sometimes I'm always tempted to be like, let's fix your presser for you. Let's just bring it, we retype it. This is what you could say instead. But we'll come back and react to, we have, whether it's the opposition leaders, whatever it is, react to what you've just said, Latif, about you don't lump people. That's not how you uphold the law. And just continue to reflect in the wake of what the president said yesterday. It's coming up to 7:30 on Fixing the Nation, one conversation at a time. We'll be back in just a moment.
Yeah.
You take it and live with it. We are reflecting on what's happening in the country today, and we are reflecting on also the words from President William Ruto yesterday, who basically here was saying enough is enough. It's headline in the Daily Nation today. Enough is enough. The president says, there are elements that are basically just going against the law, looting, torching police stations, creating anarchy, and it says, police, you have the powers to deal with them. He says, don't shoot them dead, shoot them in the leg, break their legs, let them go to hospital, and then let them find themselves in court. There's a whole conversation around that. Then there's the other statement that he made, where he's talking about there are those that are funding these protests and this public agitation, and those are just political elements that want to overthrow his government and remove it from there. And we're saying, okay, can that be investigated now finally with finality? It happened in June last year, the same statements were made, same statements were made in June this year. We're into July, the same statements are being made. Now, there are elements that are seeking to overthrow this constitution. Can the DPP take action on this and order, direct an investigation so that they can take those people who are responsible to court, finally? And then there's what Mariam said, what was not said. What was not said is acknowledging the many people who are mourning today. 31 killed on Monday, as per the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights? How many killed on June 25th, as per the same commission?
60.
In total, we have about 60 people who've basically just, died.
Close to 100 if you're combining it
in
with
this, right? 60 over the whole of last year from the June protests. So there's many people who are mourning, but there's no mention of those. There's many people whose businesses were looted and torched, and they have nowhere to begin, and there's no mention of those. And just in case we forget, can we just play you some of the business people who have lost their livelihoods, and today, as you wake up to go to work, they don't know where they're waking up to go to. Just take a listen to this.
Saizi kuna tension all over. Hata ukiangalia pande zote watu hawako salama.
Tumekuwa tumefungwa kazi kama kawaida. Tulianza kusikia watu wanakimbia, watu wakaambiwa wafunge, kuna watu wanakuja kutoka pande ya Kiambu. Dakika kidogo hivi kukaa tukaanza kusikia watu ndio wanakuja, tukafunga biashara zetu.
Kuna lori ilipita hapa na mavijana wakuwa wamebeba majebe. So hakukuwa kuzuri.
We were still rebuilding. We are still trying to reach somewhere that you can say this. The business is stable. We were being helped by our suppliers to grow. Right now, we don't have anything. We are scared because we don't know if they'll come tomorrow or even today because they were here yesterday again. So we're just hopeful. We don't know. We don't know where to run to.
It is so devastating. This business I started like 10 years ago, and like I lost everything in a day.
He started that business 10 years ago, and in one day he lost everything. Okay? This is the cost of what's going on. And as much as we may try to twist it back into the politics, there's a question of asking, so there may be, and I'm not discounting that because I don't know, there may be political elements that have hijacked these conversations and they're using it to their own selfish end. There may be people who, and we have seen goons and all, there may be people who are plotting and funding and financing a movement that causes destabilization of the country and so on and so forth. There may be that, and it's the job of the government to establish who they are and take them to court. But also, there are people who lost their loved ones, and there are people who are unhappy. Now, Janet, you took us back into the history and said, the president yesterday said, we have had many presidents before. We had Kenyatta, we had Moi, we had Kibaki, we had Uhuru. I'm here. These problems that we see today did not begin in my term. Granted, yes, the youth bulge did not begin with William Ruto. The unemployment did not begin with William Ruto. The economic situation that we are in did not begin in 2022, granted. But then there's something that he mentioned there. He was putting it like that this is mnanionea.
Mnanionea, literally.
You're picking on me.
You're picking on me. It's like, no, we have seen this. And yeah, to your point, I captured all the protests and how the different presidents reacted to them. But then the difference now is the youth bulge, the digital age, and a quick feedback, unforgiving.
Right.
Also, it's not unforgiving out of malice. It's unforgiving because there are needs that have not been met. I always say pick a struggle. Pick a struggle. Everybody in this world, in this life, pick a struggle. As a leader, are you going to stick to democracy? Are you going to stick to the law? And are you going to make sure that basic needs are met consistently, intentionally? Funds that were supposed to be allocated for education and health, we're seeing streamlining of that. We're seeing it very clearly. We're seeing transparency. If you do that, and also happen to be somebody who feels like this is so personal, if you're meeting my needs, maybe there's a very high chance, I'll say, I'm not a fan of the way this president runs the country or his personal interests, but at least you can't be both. You've got to pick a struggle. And I think the problem here is that we're seeing this happen because people are unhappy. And people are not unhappy, it's not in their heads. We've talked about this every week on this show. We unpack the different sectors, the gaps. We've also spoken to people who try to show us the glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
This is working, this is happening, this is being rolled out. Maybe you people need to amplify it more. We try to make sure we bring those voices. But by and large, first of all, globally, economies are shrinking, spaces are shrinking. People are now feeling like they're being pushed to the edge.
True.
What you cannot then do as a president is come and invalidate that and then instead reinforce inflammatory sentiments. You have to pick a struggle. Choose your hard. I answered a video called Choose Your Hard. Marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard.
Yeah.
Being an alcoholic is hard, being sober is hard, choose your hard. Being fit is hard, being unfit is hard, choose your hard. You can't have two hards, I promise you. And this is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Pick your struggle. Pick your struggle.
Also, the question on you picking on me, it's accountability that people are asking for.
That's it.
And it's reading as you're picking on me, or previous administrations have gone through this, and you've threaded that like very, very clearly. But yeah, to then interpret it as you're picking on me, it's accountability. You hold the highest seat in the land. Every single buck, when they say the buck stops with you, every single one, as far as governance and politics are concerned, ends with you. Like at the end of the day, you are the person to answer the question. So no one is picking. It's not
yeah,
it's not some concerted effort.
It's not a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's not a conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy.
It does.
Yeah.
It ends with you.
And I think the previous presidents had their own failings and they faced it and they faced the backlash, right? I don't completely think that the previous presidents were handling it, any much
Particularly
better
well,
than President Ruto is. The thing is that, like you said, we're in an information age. So more people are able to exchange ideas, and you can see what I'm feeling is also the same as what Janet is feeling, and information spreads faster and so on and so forth. So I think this is where now statecraft would maybe come in, and the president to look and see, and those in leadership, how do we handle this situation better? Right. In my opinion, I think President Uhuru Kenyatta was kicking the can down the road. He basically could see this thing is hot, and he was, okay, let me just papasa it and buy time as it goes down the road. William Ruto was his deputy. He was in government. He could see that they are running out of runway. And when he was taking over power, he knew that the runway has come to an end. Could he have handled it much better? I think so. Yeah. And maybe a way in, and we've talked about this many times, just start with the truth. The truth is, guys, this is where we are. This is the situation that we are facing today. This is how much I can handle. This is how much we need to work together to handle. Musalia Mudavadi said it in his campaigns before he joined the Kenya Kwanza. When he was launching his presidential bid, he said, tuambiane ukweli. And the speech that Musalia Mudavadi gave at Bomas on that day was pretty much, we are at a bad position economically, and our economy will need to be fixed urgently. Tuambiane ukweli. He called it the bombshell, the earthquake that he was releasing. Right? So they all knew, even Raila knew, he was there as a partner with Uhuru. They all knew where we're heading is a tough situation. It required all of them to basically see how do we handle it better, and not continue imagining that the way it was handled 15 years ago is the same way I can handle it today.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's really well. But weaponizing history to justify repression, that needs to be looked into in a big way, because, that was the history that was showing us where this is leading. And then you can't weaponize that to justify everything else that's happening. But above all, you've got to lead with... You have to lead within the constitutional rights or abandon democracy. Don't sell it if you're not leading via the constitution.
One or the other.
One or the other.
Said, choose your heart. Choose
your heart.
Choose your heart. Mariam, when you talked about things that were not said, I tried to come up with...
to fix the speech. No? Go ahead, John.
No, but it's really bullet points. You've said them all, but okay. You acknowledge the root causes. Actually, Latif has just said that we're not in a good place. So lead with that. Lead with that. That should have happened yesterday. Lead with acknowledging root causes. Commit to accountability. I don't know. I really pray in my time to come. And then now, the thing about dialogue, because I'm really grappling with it, I'm also at a point where I'm saying, because I was going to say the third thing is encourage that and say maybe we just need to talk, no matter how much people, like you said yesterday, there's no bongi, and a lot of people agreed. That could also just be a PR tactic. Just say it. Say, yeah, I think we need to go. Just say it. It wouldn't hurt you. Repeat after me. We need to die. Just say it. It wouldn't, I promise you it wouldn't hurt you. Sama too. Reaffirm non-violence. I think we need to appreciate how far it goes when you're not leading with violence, when people are still grieving from violence that has taken their loved ones and reeling from violence that has destroyed businesses. To bring it in, the timing was just really wrong. And then there was outline reforms and measures. I know I like to be very hopeful and optimistic. Let me have that, guys. But I think
it's necessary. It's necessary.
Interweaving that into anything else that was said, I don't know. It's just, that's what leadership is.
Yes.
It starts with where we are, acknowledge, mourn, grieve. You can still be angry. We have a bad relationship with the word anger. I think we've seen now a lot of people speaking about it.
Yes.
Is his anger valid? I think a lot of people will say no, just based on the fact that there's been a pattern of dissent. But to completely diminish everything else is, I think, where it goes wrong. So you can always rework the things that you're going to say. And even if you're going to speak from the heart and ad-lib, just be careful about how you're saying it, when you're saying it, and what you're saying. People heard shoot in the leg. I can see a few folks even on YouTube saying, no, but he said shoot looters, he didn't say shoot protesters. There's really no bandwidth to unpack that. It was shoot them in the leg. It was, there's a reason you have tear gas, there's a reason you have water canisters, use them. That doesn't contextualize the entire picture. So give us the context as to what you mean. Maybe that will make it easier. Mariam is just like,
Smallest ever, and stuff went wrong.
Yeah.
Stuff went wrong, right?
Are at it here. They're saying, honestly, did he say shoot protesters in the leg? Well, I don't agree with his sentiments. It's important to be truthful. He did not say protesters, he said looters. And stuff went wrong says, yes, he said shoot them in the legs, the people attacking police and burning property. The media picked that one sentence that will sell. And they go on, the media often focuses on reporting what people want to hear rather than the reality, even when they aim to do their job accurately. We've played the entire bite of the president.
Yeah.
But in case you didn't hear that, it was written verbatim in the Daily Nation.
It was.
He said, anyone caught burning another person's business or property should be shot in the leg, hospitalized, and later taken to court. That's the translation into English, but verbatim.
Yeah.
He was basically saying, yes, those caught burning property or stealing somebody else's property, shoot them in the leg, take them to hospital, let them find themselves into court. Okay. But how do you shoot them in the leg specifically? Yeah, police officers are trained and all, but you're dealing with a crowd.
Yeah.
So you're aiming for legs.
There's so many, it's so easy to unpack that. Another thing, you act as if legs have no major blood vessels, no arteries. Like, you cannot die from a gunshot to the leg. You absolutely can. That is it. Two, that the thread between what happened after Kipchumba Murkomen's shoot to kill order and what we saw on Sabasaba, again, you can't ignore that. That's why it's important to give context to things and not just to say, oh, he said this. What did we see after police were basically given carte blanche? It ended up being not protesters who are being shot, but people in their homes. Bridget, in her home, bullets flying. Find her in her home, kill her. That's not just her story, it's the story of many others. 31 killed in one day, on a day where in Nairobi, protests were largely not a thing because there was no movement. But in 16 other counties, there were protests and 31 people have lost their lives. Like, you can't just, pick and choose without context. So as much as you're saying that's the part that will sell, no, that's the part that is problematic. And all of it anyway, but that's the part that's truly problematic.
Yeah, that's well said.
We have to be, very, very honest with ourselves and be contextual about things. It's not just a statement. It's a statement coming on the back of many other statements, many injustices, many problems, many curtailments of freedoms.
Yeah, and it's not selling. It's not saying something that will sell. It's and I think Eric, Mariam, and I in this hour have really given the broader context. Number one, of what should have been said. Number two, what was said and how inflammatory that can be with regards to missing out on also what was not said, to Mariam's point. And this is the reality we're living in. It's not about picking a headline and it's selling. It's just about trying to unpack and trying to understand, what does it mean when the president says that? What does it mean when it's not said in context? Right. What does it mean when there's no validation for lives lost and businesses that were also damaged? What does all that mean? That's what we're here discussing. It's not about taking sides and running with the headline and being sensationalist. Absolutely not. But we do have to have these difficult conversations. Like I said yesterday, a lot of people haven't been here before, and it's very uncomfortable. You know, when you're in an area where there's relative warmth, etc., then you're told, step outside into the cold. You don't want to. As Kenyans, we just need to have a conversation about what's happening in this country. Everybody has different opinions, but let's have that conversation. Will it be comfortable? Probably not.
Probably
But
not.
are we trying to push towards the pursuit of justice and access and fairness? We absolutely are. So let's get comfortable with getting a bit uncomfortable. People's lives depend on it. We've seen people lose their lives, people lose their businesses. So let's talk about it, and let's not be afraid to speak the truth as it has been said out loud and written.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with sensationalism. It's really just saying, let's continue to have these conversations. I think it's paramount.
That's true. We're just about to get into the next hour, basically, and we'll be speaking to a big techie and lead consultant at J&K Consulting. His name is George Njuguna. You know that name if you operate in the tech world, but we'll be talking about the ABCs of AI and all of that. But before we get into it, just some breaking news, and that we'll be covering in the news fix in the next hour as well, on the passing of the Chief Kadhi of Kenya, that is Sheikh Abdul Halim Hussein. And message from the judiciary, a message of condolence from the judiciary. It is with deep sorrow and sadness that I announce the passing of the Chief Kadhi of Kenya, that's Sheikh Abdul Halim Hussein, on behalf of the judiciary of Kenya, the Judicial Service Commission, and on my own behalf. I do extend our heartfelt condolences to the family of the late Chief Kadhi, the Muslim community in Kenya, and all those whose lives he touched through his service and leadership. He served at the judiciary and the people of Kenya with unwavering dedication, humility, and integrity. As Chief Kadhi, he was a champion of justice, fairness, and equity, and particularly in matters of personal law within the Muslim community. His passing is a great loss, not only to the judiciary, but to the entire country. We remember to honor him as a deeply spiritual and principled leader who championed peaceful coexistence, respect for diversity, and harmony in our society. May the Almighty Allah grant Sheikh Abdul Halim Hussein the highest place in Jannah and comfort his family and loved ones during this time of grief. That's a message from Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome.
Yeah, message of condolence, yes, to the judiciary, the fraternity, and to his family as well.
Yes, indeed.
Getting to the top of the hour, in the next hour, we seek to understand AI, artificial intelligence, and a big tech person will be joining us for that conversation. Let's learn. And then at 9 a.m., we'll have Shika Mike. And today we are giving one fixer, a lady who will be here, and she has a letter to the president. Dear Mr. President, keep it here for that. It's coming up to 8 a.m. Good morning.